What's your parents still don't know story? Story 1. I went skydiving when I was 19 and sprained both my ankles landing. It was not a tandem dive. I used a small army chute. Instruction consisted of another student spending 2 hours having us jump off a roof to practice landing. Oh, the 70s. Story 2. My government econ teacher allowed me to go get the green stuff out of my locker and flush them for me, so I didn't get expelled when they were doing a locker search. R.I.P. Mr. Cosgrove. Computer teacher at the same school would just look at some of the students and tell them to at least try to cover up the smell of plant substance with some perfume cologne before coming back from lunch. Story 3. That I did not wreck their car the night before I left for basic training. It was my little brother. I just took the blame because I was leaving. Story 4. I was drugged in Amsterdam when I went on my trip to the Netherlands. I got myself out of the situation I was in and back to my hostel just fine when I started feeling the effects of the substances kicking in. I've taken GHB before, so I knew I needed to get out of there when I started feeling it. I didn't tell my parents that, though, because I didn't want them to worry for the rest of my trip. Also, I don't think they would ever let me travel again if they found out I got drugged on the other side of the world. Story 5. 20 years old, my ex and I get a call from his best friend, who happened to also deal LSD. He was freaking out because they had been robbed of all their guns, money, and substances while they were out of town. And could we please come over for support? We arrive and he is making threats about finding the guy. The door gets kicked open and 4 or 5 people come in and point guns to our heads, making us get on the ground. They were the ones who raided the house while our friends were gone. A crumpled warrant went unnoticed on the floor. No rights were read, and they were in plain clothes, so it took a bit before we realized they were undercover cops. They dug through my and my ex's pockets and found nothing, so they let us go. I was curious how I remained so calm through it all. The wife was screaming and actually pissed her pants. So then I joined the Air Force. Story 6. Lied about why I was going to Louisiana. Said it was a conference for an academic program I was part of. But really I was meeting my long-distance boyfriend in New Orleans, and there was no conference. That program never has any sort of interstate conferences. I told them that he'd be visiting me back in our home state after the conference, and I'd just pick him up at the airport on my way home, so he'd stay in our guest room for the week. We spent a week together in NOLA, then a week back in my home state before he had to fly home at the end of the school break. Both of us were in university at the time. All in all, it worked out because we're married now, almost 20 years, and have an awesome kid. Story 7. Why my brother and I renovated our basement rec room. We had a party while they went to Hawaii for 3 weeks. This was back in the late 70s. Party got out of hand. 100 plus showed up, destroyed the basement. Pretty much a total rebuild. Story 8. Not my parents, but my best friend. At her wedding, the groomsmen really dropped the ball and forgot a lot of stuff. Groom didn't want to stress her out, so between me, MOH, and my husband, we fixed everything. It was practically a farce. We were ducking down hallways so bride wouldn't see us bringing in the cummerbunds we snuck out to buy. I had to distract her by pretending to cry while my husband carried a giant decoration piece right behind her. I convinced her to check her makeup outside in natural light so the groom could come get my husband's extra shoes from the room. She still doesn't know to this day, but her husband always gives us a wink when their wedding comes up. Story 9. I was actually going to tell my mom the time I had 2 friends over while she was working overnight, and they both got way too tipsy and threw up all over my house. But then my mom said my sister had told her years ago, that god-darn meanie. Story 10. My mom had Alzheimer's disease. If we told her bad news, she'd get really upset, and then she would forget. So we stopped telling her. Her brother died, we didn't tell her. My husband died, we didn't tell her. One day she asked where her brother had been. We told her that he was staying with relatives. Technically true, as he is buried in the family plot. Answer. It's a kindness, really. I commend you for it. I dislike that my family insisted on telling my grandmother the truth every time she'd ask one of those questions. She was so happy most of the time, but then people insisted she needed to know my grandpa had died, or that her son, who was hit by a car at 5 years old and eliminate, wasn't going to be home from school today. Her entire day would be ruined because my aunt insisted she needed to remember. Ugh. Story 11. That I used to sneak out at 16, 17 and hook up with older women. It's cringy as hell now and extremely dangerous, but they'll never know the dangerous, unhinged shoot I did. Answer. I'm turning 18 next week, and I had a 2-year period of sneaking out between 14 and 16. And as far as I know, my parents never found out. Not yet. But the amount of times I stumbled back to my house tipsy, and the time the police caught us but let us go. Hint, if you aren't doing anything wrong and you see a police car at night, don't run away from it. It will raise their suspicions greatly. Story 12. 2006. Parents were divorced by then. Lived in South Florida. Wanted to go to Atlanta to see Slayer. Dad said no. Mom said yes. Dad still doesn't know I went. Only time I ever got to see Slayer too, and the original lineup at that. Story 13. My parents don't know why I'm actually on antidepressants. They think I'm on them for no good reason, and mostly for OCD. They think it's ridiculous that I'm on Wellbutrin, and that I don't need them. My parents also think I don't need therapy, LOL. Answer. Mine think the Lexapro was just to prevent the baby blues and newborn anxiety while I was pregnant with my daughter. I'm lucky I left that screening with a prescription and not a grippy sock lockdown, because I flunked that quiz big time. They don't know how long and how intensely I have battled ideation. Their lives have been hard. I don't want to make them harder, but they also have some very outdated ideas about mental health. Also, now that I'm medicated and in semi-regular therapy, regularly scheduled, anything is tough with little kids and a full-time job. I'm doing fudge awesome. That Lexapro can stay forever, even though I'm a bit fatter than I was before. Story 14. I got in trouble with a cop by being out too late when I was staying out too late. Punishment was calling my parents and tell them what was happening. So I called my mom's cell, knowing she wouldn't answer, and just had a one-sided conversation. I knew her phone's PIN, so when I got home, I just went in and deleted the voicemail I left. Pretty low stakes, but I felt crafty. Answer. Something similar happened with me. Back in high school, I had this one teacher that just disliked students, and I was a bit of a chatterbox. So I was yapping about world history one day, in the middle of math class, and teacher said, "Since you like yapping so much, you can call your mom and tell her you're being disruptive." My mom's number didn't start with the same area code as the state we lived in, so I dialed the number, got the error from the landline, and then pretended to have a convo in Arabic with my mom. Even begged a little to make it believable. Lol. Story 15. I have a motorcycle. It's only been 4 months of owning it, and I'm an adult and live alone, but it's 4 months longer than I thought I would keep it a secret. Story 16. When I was 16, I got my hands on a jewel. I kept it in my wallet, thinking it'd be safe there. One morning, my mom went into my wallet in front of me, pulled it out, and asked what it was. 2 possibilities ran through my head. 1, she knows what it is, and I'm fudge. 2, she doesn't know what it is. I figured I was fudge, but told her it was a USB stick in case she genuinely didn't know what it was. My dad runs a gas station, and 100 would have been able to recognize it. She pulled the pod out, inspected it for a bit before shrugging and putting it back in my wallet. I still can't believe I got away with it, Lamau Wu. Story 17. One time me, my sister, and our cousins parked my parents' truck at the metro station and took the Gold Line into downtown LA for the day. On the ride back to the station, my sister realized she didn't know where the car keys were. So we went back to the car, and not only was it unlocked, but she had left the keys sitting in the ignition the whole day. And I was like, here's the deal. No one tells Dad or we all die. He still does not know. Story 18. 20 years ago, when I was 18, I lost my virginity to our 42-year across-the-road neighbor the day she finalized her divorce. I go back to my parents every year for Christmas. She calls round to see them on Christmas Eve. At some point in the evening, we'll make eye contact, exchange a half smile, and that's it. Story 19. I spent a good chunk of college tuition they gave me on the first girlfriend I got when I moved out, then worked myself like a dog to make the money back. Story 20. I lost my virginity on a family camping trip to some boy camping with his family next to us. I can't even remember his name, just that it was not a long encounter. Story 21. My best friend's mom wouldn't let her go to a theme park with me because she only wanted her to do educational activities over the summer. So we said we would go to a museum instead. Drove to the museum and took a photo of ourselves outside. Then we went to the theme park. Story 22. My sister speaks Spanish almost fluently because she lived in Spain for a few years. In college, I needed to take 2 semesters of Spanish, and I was just barely passing the first one. My sister offered to take the class for me over the summer for $500. She looked enough like my student ID, so she just took it for me. It's honestly the wildest thing we've ever done. But she got me a nice A for my GPA, and I went on to get my doctorate. Our dad is really strict and very serious about education, so I think he'd freak out even if we told him today, almost 15 years later. Story 23. I used to lean bisexual. I literally had a girlfriend for 5 years. We're still amicable, and my mom still thinks we were only ever friends. Story 24. I spent the night after junior prom driving around with a couple of friends instead of at a friend's house like I said going to. Not a big thing at all. But then again, I was a bit of a goody-goody in school, and that was the extent of my rebellion. Story 25. Winter break. My freshman year of college, I met another college guy in a chat room. We met in person after a few weeks. He seemed normal, and so when he invited me over to spend the night at his place, I went. 45 minutes away from campus, no cell phone, and no one knew, except my roommate who didn't really know where I was going. He lived at home with his parents, who I didn't meet. Nothing happened. He dropped me back off the next afternoon, but still, not one of my smartest decisions. Story 26. I was in crippling debt for about 10 years. My parents would ask if I paid my credit card off, and I'd just say, of course. In reality, I had multiple cards and they were all maxed. I was never going to get ahead. I was blessed to have an extremely generous person come into my life and pull me out. I've been very smart ever since, but I still can't ever admit to my parents I was in that much trouble. Story 27. That I got a tattoo at the age of 14 from my sister's neighbor while my sister was drooling on herself after she shot up. Story 28. I've had issues with fertility and pregnancy loss this past year. My parents know about my first loss, but not the next two. My mother handled it so poorly, looking to ME for comfort when I was the one grieving. And then my sister, who is mentally unstable, and I don't talk to her, started comparing her life to mine, saying I had it better than her. So my mom decided to try to cheer her up by telling her about how rough my life is with my miscarriage. So, yeah, I'm pregnant again. This time I've gotten to 11 weeks, and my mom still doesn't know about all of that because I don't think she's capable of being mature about it all. Story 29. My brother used to sneak girls in late at night all the time. I always heard him. I was very well paid for my silence. Story 30. There was a secret room in the house where I grew up, and I performed witchcraft in it as a teenager. When they moved out, I was in college and unable to remove the few things that remained in there. I've often wondered if the new owners somehow discovered it and wondered about the little table with candles, a mirror, and an incense burner on it. Story 31. It would take me days of writing to fess up to all the stuff my brothers and I got into or out of. My parents never really gave a shoot what we did, as long as they didn't have to hear about it. Answer. My friend had her son a few months ago, and her husband and FIL were talking about the trouble they were going to get into with 3 generations. Illegal fireworks, camping pranks, typical stuff. Before they sheepishly realized the ladies had walked into the room. Story 32. That I was violently intimacy assaulted, held hostage by a stalker. My mother went to her grave not knowing, and I don't see any need to tell my aging dad about it now. Story 33. I hid a bottle of vodka inside my mom's childhood teddy bear. Mom was really good at finding the things I didn't want her to, but she never checked her own stuff. I hid plant substance cookies in one of her purses in her closet, and she never found them. Story 34. They know now, since I finally confronted them with it when I was about 30 and in serious therapy, that I was repeatedly molested by the kindly older neighbor who started that when I was 4. But they do not know, and I will never tell them, and he's dead anyway, that I lost my coming-of-age virginity on their bed while they were out of town. Answer. I'm so sorry you went through that. I have similar. Same age range. Had a pregnancy scare at 12. No kid should be sitting on a school bus alone, thinking they're going to hell because they're Catholic. Premarital intimacy is a sin. I was made to think I wanted it by my abuser, that I seduced him. No 5-year-old is capable of that, and wondering if they'll need an abortion. The only good is that the abuse stopped after that. Story 35. There's a rather extensive collection of painkillers in my parents' bathroom that wouldn't really work at all if anyone needed to take them right now, because I took them all when I was a teenager to get high and replaced them with regular jerk ibuprofen. Story 36. 17. Got tipsy at a friend's one afternoon, walked home, and my mom made me build a TV stand from IKEA that she couldn't figure out. I kept my mouth shut and just built it. She sat there and watched me build the whole thing absolutely shoot-faced, better than she could sober. She never noticed. I never mentioned it again. My sisters always say I'm some goody two-shoes boring person who never does anything wrong fun. No, sis, I'm just not dumb, so never get caught. Story 37. That I dated the guy that groomed me, or how long it lasted. Their thoughts is maybe a few weeks to a couple months, but no, it was most of the school year. In fact, my mom says she doesn't even want to know the full story. Story 38. When I was a kid, my mom had a MacBook, and one day I was probably acting up, and she must have taken away computer privileges or something, so I punched her MacBook and the internal screen broke. She went to use it and had no idea how it could have possibly happened, and didn't bother getting it fixed and just got rid of it. I never told her or anyone about it. Story 39. I'm NC with both my parents, and my BF is the same with his. No one in either family knows we've had a kid. Story 40. I took 2 antique brooches from my grandma. Not to sell, just liked them and knew she never wore them. Assumed she'd never know. She looked at me a little funny on another visit, but never said anything. I felt horrible, but thought I couldn't put back right away, too obvious. Couldn't keep at home because parents might find. So took to school, where they were stolen from my locker, which seemed fitting to me and oddly felt better. Had an interesting dream after she died that she forgave me and thought I'd felt bad long enough. Story 41. Not sure if they do or not. 30-ish years ago, I bought an 18th of plant substance and stashed it in the battery compartment in a little Casio SK1 keyboard that had not been moved from the top of my bookcase in years. The very next day, I came home from school and walked in to find my mom and sister talking in the kitchen and my toddler nephew sitting on the floor, playing the keyboard. Still don't know what happened to it. Story 42. In high school, a friend of mine was basically abandoned by her parents, so I moved her into my house. My parents knew she was there a lot and thought she came over very early every morning so we could walk to school together. And they didn't mind having her over for dinner because she was funny and would help with cleanup. She ate at other friends' houses too, so it wasn't every night. She lived in our house for more than a year, and they never figured it out. Story 43. The amount of parties I had at their house. Was very thankful no major damage ever occurred, and any that did was easy to fix. Story 44. My parents never knew I contemplated tragic end with my dad's 9mm from ages 6 to 17. He didn't even know I knew about the gun. Story 45. We had moved to Las Vegas during the recession in '07, and because I was too much to handle at the time, so they thought a fresh start would help me. Little did they know I was sleeping with the track star. And when I would practice my long-distance running, a group of us would sneak into the apartment complex we ran past during practice and go swimming in our underwear, then run back when practice was almost over. Story 46. I knew my mom had a .38 revolver in her jewelry box until she was about 40. Did my dad know? No clue. Doubt he would have cared. My sister sure as fudge didn't know when I told her about 4 months ago. I knew because Mom lent me some money she kept stashed in the trap compartment. She always had a couple 20s and a pack of smokes. I was 14 when I found out. A couple times in college I had to bum some cash or smokes, and she'd instruct me to take from the trap door. That's how I pinpointed when the gun disappeared. Story 47. When I was about 6, I had this ridiculous idea to put pennies down the garbage disposal to see what would happen. Of course it broke, and my dad spent hours going back and forth to the hardware store and had to install a new one. Story 48. I got caught sneaking out once. I told them it was my first time, but I would really do it every weekend to go with my boyfriend. They also think I lost my virginity at 19. I was 15. Story 49. I had a modem hidden in the house after being explicitly forbidden to ever own one, and I used it heavily. Story 50. My brother and I staged a break-in at our parents' house as we had tipsy all the booze stored there. They still don't know it was us. They even called in the police. Story 51. I just told them about this last week, so technically they do know now. When I was in Athens in college, me 3 others, were very tipsy coming home from the bar and could not find our hotel. We ended up accepting a ride from 2 strangers who thankfully didn't have any bad intentions. Even at near blackout, I was like, this is how I get intimacy trafficked. Story 52. They don't know that I clearly remember them having a bondage horse when I was a very young kid. Yep, I realized what it was way later. I guess I should consider myself lucky I never caught them using it. Story 53. Mine is that, nearly every night in summer when I was 16, my best friend and I would climb out of either her skylight or my window to sit on the roof, look at the stars, and have deep conversations. Treasured memory. Story 54. Who intimacy abused me as a child. Am no contact with my mom. She would stick up for my abuser anyway. And I don't see a reason for telling my dad. I've opened up about it in therapy and am getting help. Story 55. I have a tattoo near my ankle. Got it when I was 21. I am 30 now. Summers are the worst time to visit home. Story 56. I puked on the guinea pig because the acid was too strong, not because of the pizza. My buddy didn't tell me acid lasted 8 hours and that it ebbs and flows. Went home thinking everything was cool now and promptly started playing with the guinea pig. Everything around me started breathing, and my dad thought, hey, serious conversation time. Uked all over the guinea pig and ran upstairs blaming it on the pizza at lunch. To this day, they still have no clue. They know everything else, but this one I've kept. LOL. Story 57. Well, apart from the magic mushroom sessions we used to have after work at my first job, leaving my house keys in my locker, getting home, and realizing, jumped the back brick wall, which was about 8 feet high, so I had to use the lamppost as an aid to climb. Jump down into the garden, climb on top of the bathroom roof to get to the upstairs window, take the unlocked glass ventilation panels out, climb in, and put the glass back in. Yes, I had to break into my own house. They never knew. My father always kept the panels unlocked so it was easy to open and remove the glass panels. Story 58. Nearly my entire time at university. That is a chunk of 5 years I shall take with me to my grave with the amount of dumb things I saw did. Story 59. My sibling and I got chased out of a local park by the cops the week of my high school graduation. I was 17. Sibling was 14. Sibling's bestie was with us. They were 14 also. And a 19-year-old friend of Mob from band camp. No, seriously, I really did meet him at band camp. That I was trying to hook up with joined us as well. There were a ton of high school kids there celebrating graduation with a lot of underage drinking and substances use. I wasn't part of that crowd, but the park closed at dusk, so none of us should have been there anyway. City cops swept the park and we all scattered. Sibling and I stuck together. Their bestie ran off another direction and ended up in a group with some 24-year-old guy nobody knew. Yeah, nothing good comes from 24-year-olds who like to hang out with high school kids. A bunch of kids got busted for underage drinking substances use. We refused to leave without Sib's bestie. We're close to getting arrested ourselves for not leaving the park, when bestie emerged from the darkness with a knot of other kids. 19-year-old friend scooped us up in his car, took us all home. Way past curfew. Not the worst thing a kid could do, sure, but my folks were hella straight-laced. We would have gotten our jerk handed to us on several platters with a side of mashed potatoes if they'd found out at the time. Story 60. There are very few at this point. My mother isn't even shocked anymore when I bust out an old-time crime. I'm 54 and she's 78. We get tipsy and talk shoot. Probably never tell her about the summer I was involved in a crime that literally broke dozens of state and federal laws. Pound me in the jerk prison kind of stuff. No one was physically harmed. Financially? Story 61. I told everything to my parents, every substances that I take, every crime that could think off, and it was most relieved feeling I ever felt. They accepted me for who I am, and I am so grateful for that. Love you, Mom. Love you, Dad. Story 62. That night I came home and my mom watched as I ate that entire giant bowl of potato salad, like a huge plastic Tupperware container. I was high as a kite. In retrospect, I am fairly sure she knew. That potato salad hit the spot that night, though. Story 63. That when I ran away when I was 16, I got a job and had an apartment with a roommate the same age. What my father didn't know when the police finally got up with me was that I had made friends with the motorcycle gang, a rather notorious one. And when they heard that the cops had picked me up, they went into my apartment and cleaned out all the things that kids don't want their parents knowing about. ETA. My father passed away not knowing, but my brothers who are older than me and always thought that they could tell me what to do don't know about any of that. Story 64. I used to sneak girls into my room through my window for intimacy, like a lot of girls and often. Never got caught with any of them. I actually had a girl stay with me for a week when she ran away. Stayed in my room and we'd shower and eat and whatever after my parents left for work. I missed that week of school. Fun times. Story 65. Burnt out a computer monitor in the middle of ultra porn. Was able to find one of the ancient, legendary black and green mono monitors in storage and rig up a chain of adapters to get it connected to my computer and clean up. Story 66. I have a child. 2017 girlfriend of 9 months gave birth. Child was adopted. Mom knows, Dad, and most of my family do not. Story 67. I got off work at midnight and didn't come home. Instead, my new boyfriend picked me up and we went to a park to fool around. My dad woke up around 3 a.m. and realized I wasn't home. My parents didn't know how I thought I could get away with it. It's because I did the exact same thing the night before and they had no idea. And once I told my mom I had a meeting with my advisor. In actuality, I was going to meet up with my FWB to lose our virginities to each other. Story 68. When I was like 10 years old, I somehow figured out the password you needed to buy stuff on my iPad. I then proceeded to spend a ton of money, I'd say somewhere between 100 and 150, on video games and in-game currency. Eventually, my parents figured out that someone was spending a ton of money on games, but as far as I'm aware, they didn't realize it was me. Go stop this from happening. They made it so all my and my siblings' devices would not let us purchase anything unless they approved it. Story 69. That the babysitter they let watch me molested me several times when I was 6, 7. I am 53, mom is gone, dad is ill, and I never told them. Nothing they can do, and it would have eliminated them both. Story 70. That I now have dual U.S.-Norway citizenship. They also don't know that I am in the legal process of gaining Irish citizenship. Story 71. My dad thinks that his hot tub spontaneously broke, but the real story is that my sister and I drunkenly and stupidly put bubble bath in it one night when they were out of town. He still talks about how much BS it is that his house had a faulty hot tub. We promised to take that one to the grave. Story 72. I got in trouble with a cop by being out too late when I was staying out too late. Punishment was calling my parents and tell them what was happening. So I called my mom's cell, knowing she wouldn't answer, and just had a one-sided conversation. I knew her phone's PIN, so when I got home, I just went in and deleted the voicemail I left. Pretty low stakes, but I felt crafty. Also, I hooked up on the sofa they still use in their living room. Story 73. I jumped the family wagon over an elevated drainage ditch bridge, like a small tabletop, at 16 years old. The first week I had my driver's license and cracked the engine block. I'm 49 and will never tell them. Story 74. I'm by over 15 years of my life. I've been comfortably me, but I don't know that I'll ever come out to them. Story 75. My mom and stepfather misscheduled a trip and were gone for like 3 weeks around Thanksgiving one year. I was house-sitting for them when they were gone. Anyway, they have an amazing kitchen and huge dining room, so I had a bunch of my friends who are professional chefs come over, and I hosted a Thanksgiving dinner for all our friends who had nowhere else to do. As far as I know, they have no idea I did this. Story 76. 25 years later, I'm visiting my parents and see that they still have a fancy bottle of pear schnapps that is mostly water. Story 77. My dad probably knew something sus was going on some level, but he drove me to visit a friend when really I was losing my virginity. Oops. Story 78. That my husband and I have an open marriage, and that I've had the same affair partner for over 4 years. Story 79. Stick and poke tat I did in my room at 15, and I'm non-binary and been using they/them publicly since 15 as well. Been a decade and they're none the wiser. Story 80. That we have 3 LGBTQ people in the immediate family. Not counting those 3, only myself and one other family member actually know. Story 81. Aside from the handful of times I drank and smoked underage, LOL, they don't know my husband got a vasectomy. We chose not to have kids, and my mom said, don't do anything drastic. But my husband got a vasectomy a few weeks later. It was already a long ordeal with them about the no kids thing, and I don't feel like talking about it even more. Story 82. I'm in my 50s, and my parents don't know I am gay, and I will never tell them. We have a great relationship as we are, and this is something they just don't need to know about my life. It is something they absolutely will not accept, so I keep it hidden. Story 83. I don't know if it's a tradition everywhere, but my middle school had a couple of policies regarding missing homework and below-average test grades. You only could do a recovery test if the failed test came back to school signed by a parent or a guardian. And the most feared one, if you missed your homework, a parent guardian would have to sign a special paper, the infamous ticket. If you had 3 of these in a 2-month period, you would either be suspended or get your parents called in school. I have got a good couple of both signed tests and tickets throughout 5th to 7th grade, with 5th being my worst school period. Yes, even more than high school. There was a week that grade where I got 2 in the same day. It increased my phobia of Friday the 13th. I really feared that I would get a whoop in the jerk for that, but my escape plan was foiled when my granny said she wouldn't sign my tickets anymore after my parents learned I went for her to sign. So I forged her signature for one ticket. That was eventually discovered. It took a lot of restraint for my parents to not execute me at the spot, LOL. But wait, wasn't there another ticket? Well, I forgot to bring it signed, but the teacher didn't remember it. So in the same night, I threw it away in the school trash. Nobody took a notice, even when I came back this year after a long time for a quick substitution gig. So, to this day, 10 years after 5th grade and almost 6 years after graduating middle school, I still owe them a signed ticket. Maybe I was discovered by, or already told my parents about it. After graduation, of course. I don't know. But truth is, even they didn't seem to care. I'm 20 and on college. WTF is a missing ticket from 5th grade gonna do? Story 84. Told them I was studying late the night I accidentally became the houseplant whisperer at a friend's party. Still don't know which is worse. Story 85. My boyfriend, now husband, used to sneak into my house at night. He would park down the street and wait until everyone in my house was asleep and come to the back door. Story 86. That I am asexual. I do not want a relationship, nor do I want kids, which they probably think I do. I do, however, suspect that my parents think I am gay, which I'm not. They have never explicitly said that, but my stubborn disinterest in women, which doesn't mean I do show interest in men, makes me think they think I'm gay. Also, whenever the topic of relationships comes up in the family, they always make sure to mention that it is also okay to be gay. Story 87. My high school girlfriend and I aborted a prom night pregnancy. They don't know why I haven't spoken to them 7 years because they've never asked. Story 88. My friends and I were roading Smoking Spice. I know, terrible decision all around. And I didn't use my blinker when turning onto the blacktop. Cop was sitting right there and whipped around and pulled us over. I have 5 people in my car and I was the only one who had an ID. They threatened to bring the dogs and pulled me out of the car. I told them some bullshit and insisted they wouldn't find anything if they brought the dogs. I got back in the car for what felt like an eternity, and they came back and handed me my license and told us to get home. My parents never found out, and we never really spoke of it again. All of us were scared shitless and stopped smoking spice shortly after. Story 89. That I didn't actually get poked in the eye by a stick when I was 9. My brother and I were shooting a BB gun loaded with birdseed at each other, and he shot me in the side of the head as I came around the corner of the garage. Needed surgery and got 51 micro stitches. Story 90. My parents still don't know me, and my friends got into a brief car chase with the police when I was 16 on New Year's Eve, and the only reason we got away is because we turned into a neighborhood that had a lot of weird turns and kinda hidden cul-de-sacs. I knew the neighborhood like the back of my hand from riding my bike through it every day for years. Story 91. I used to hang out with the latchkey kid at their house. Their parents would tell my parents they were watching us, and then we would be off on many adventures and getting into trouble. My parents are very strict, so it made for a sneaky kid. Story 92. In the worst stages of depression, it was a text from my aunt and my mom asking me if I was going to come home for dinner. That stopped me from, Story 93. I didn't love my mother, single mom. She constantly interfered and nagged me on all matters related to child rearing, from potty training to which photographer I should hire for my son's bar mitzvah. She was relentless. I was so relieved when she died. I don't miss her at all. Story 94. I got pulled over once and had to do field sobriety tests because I admitted to drinking. He only did the eye nystagmus test and was about to make me do the walk and turn. But by the grace of God, him and his partner quickly left to go to a more urgent call. I never told my parents, but I felt so guilty. I called my mom's friend who was a lawyer and confessed. She gave me a good talking to, and I've never drank and drove again. Story 95. That I got fired from the job I moved across the country for. I'm working a warehouse job until I can secure another job in the original field. I talk to them every other day and they have no idea. My dad turned 75 this year and I'm trying so hard to make something of myself before he passes. I just don't want them to worry about me. Story 96. We had multi-gender sleepovers, so the 2 gay guys in our neighborhood could hook up judgment-free while we girls entertained ourselves with other stuff. Story 97. That I'm in therapy, although I talk about it enough with my siblings and cousins that she may very well know by now. Mom will just demand to know what I say about her. She's pretty relentless when she believes something is being withheld from her, so I'd rather not have to deflect for the rest of her life. Story 98. When I was 17, I had a high school job. The job started at 4:30, but basically every day I'd go to my girlfriend's house, and we'd have intimacy before work. Her mom got home at 5 every day, so nobody knew. My parents thought I went straight to work after school. Nope. Story 99. I was violation at a college party and didn't tell my parents anything ever. The reason was that even though I was over 18, my parents would have prevented me from going to any more college parties. Story 100. My parents don't know that the reason I moved out in 2008 was so that I could get on trans hormones. I was tragic end at the time, and moving out was a last-ditch effort. Story 101. We were visiting my grandparents out of state. Grandma passed, but I had to get back to work. I was 20 at the time. I had some pot and a pipe with me. I ditched in the garbage while my mom went to check on my ticket. Story 102. Anything I did and still do, LOL. To be specific, one thing got my first stuck and poke at 14. It's covered now. It's so thick and horrible you can still see it under the cover-up. Story 103. We did know about the secret room and were 100 involved in it, just not the bad stuff. And the ride-on mower was us too. Story 104. I, 52F, just shared this with my parents about a month ago. LOL when they were out of town. My friends and I took their car and drove all over the city. I was 15. Also just told them the reason everyone wanted to stay the night at my house was that it was so easy to sneak out. They were sound sleepers and never knew. Story 105. My mom opened a group home for teenage girls when I was also a teenager. I became close to a couple of the girls living there and snuck out with 2 of them one night to smoke plant substance. It was pretty dark and for some reason we were walking through a lot of bushes. I tripped and lost my phone. We looked for a good 20 minutes and could not find it. The girls told me they weren't actually planning on going back home. One of them told me to tell my mom that she stole it so that I'm not involved. Ended up putting the blame on the other of the 2 since I found out that she had taken some of my clothes. Story 106. That I tried to end my life in high school. I did eventually tell them about my depression and anxiety. Today I am well-adjusted and a well-medicated adult who is very happy with her life. Story 107. The amazing parties I had every Friday or Saturday night, every weekend. My mom started seeing a man who lived quite a way away, considering she didn't drive either. I was 15, so it obviously made sense for her to spend 2 days and 1 night with him and leaving me to make sure my 13-year-old sibling lived, etc. OMG, I had some amazing parties, fair play. When I say parties, I mean me bringing back whoever wanted to come back from the local nightclub when it closed. Story 108. I used to sneak out at night a lot. I'd go to parties, go get high with friends, etc., crawl back home at like 4 a.m. tipsy and or high as shoot, and somehow never got caught. Story 109. In college, I drank very heavily, as most college students do. They just don't know how heavily and how often. I drink, but now responsibility. Being tipsy sucks. Story 110. I gave oral to my first ever girlfriend when I was a teen in our house. She ended up being really awful and abusive, and now she's a severely unhealthy woman who's a cashier at the grocery store and abuses her husband. I would dislike for my ultra-Christian family to know I did it, and I would be ashamed and embarrassed because of how awful she was and how she treated me. It kind of is a physical evidence of how low my self-esteem was. Story 111. I was like 10. Brother got me mad and locked the door of our bedroom. I kept hitting the door until I broke down the frame. Panic. Got some small nails and some wood paint and fixed it. It's still there after 30 years, and I don't think our parents ever discovered the deed because nobody said anything about it. Story 112. I had an early miscarriage at 19. If the dates were correct, my baby would have been born around the same time my mother died of cancer. Also did a couple substances and had a friend come by my house to be a trip sitter while my dad was away on vacation. Story 113. When I was 14, my cousin and I took my late mother's car out to go throw some disgusting crap all over one of my bully's houses after 8th grade graduation. We didn't exactly know where he lived, so it took way longer to get there than intended. So we ended up burning a noticeable amount of gas. It turns out I put 2-stroke lawnmower gas in the car, which had oil mixed in it. He never found out what we did and assumed something was wrong with the car. He almost went to take it to the shop, but the problem cleared up. Story 114. Back when we were still in ALDR, I drove 9 hours by myself to stay the weekend with my now fiancé at his old apt. I told my parents I was staying with my best friend was working double shifts. Even better, my best friend happily agreed to cover for me if they asked. Story 115. I wrote and mailed a fake college acceptance letter for my dad to find so that I could convince him that I was going on a tour of their campus when I was really just going to visit my long-distance boyfriend. I was 20. Story 116. First time I took an edible, I thought it just wasn't working, but it actually just took a while to kick in and hit when I was driving home. Most stressful drive ever, because I knew I was high but couldn't do anything about it. Oops. Story 117. My girlfriend at the time, now wife, so I guess it worked out, LOL, used to come over almost every morning before school our senior year after my parents went to work, and we would have the kind of loud and crazy intimacy only two peak teenagers could manage. This was in like 2010, so no Ring doorbells or cameras. Good times, man. Story 118. I was bit by a tiger. A cub. Went on vacation with buddies to Mexico and went to a sketchy zoo one day. We were drinking all day and the tiger had a few cubs. Cubs were on a chain and they were letting two at a time come in to pet them. They were soft and fuzzy. I was scratching its head and then scratched under its jaw. My dog loves that. Tiger cub, not so much. It did a quick pounce and grabbed onto my forearm. Just a few puncture wounds and blood. As far as parents know, it was glass shards from having a beer bottle passed to me, missed, and shattered on my arm. Story 119. I've been a nudist since 11 to 12 years old, and even though I moved out, they still don't know, nor do they know my roommates are nudists too. Story 120. That guy I dated when I was 17 that I said was 20, he was actually 32. My mom almost put it together when I told her he had been in the Navy, but I dumped him because he seemed to think we were getting married or something. Luckily, she never connected all the dots. The 90s were interesting. Story 121. My sister and I went exploring out in the woods at night and wandered the woods until we got 3 houses down from Mom's house. She was at work, and the neighbor drove us home. Story 122. They don't know the extent of my obsession with my teenage crush or the extent to which I was acting trans. I thought I was trans, FTM, for years 14 through 18, and I still struggle with it in therapy. But I was secretly breast binding, unsafely, wearing boys' clothes outside the house, going by the male version of my name at school with friends, and I was mildly obsessed with a trans girl, FTM. Now she is just F in our friend group. I thought it was true love. You know how teenagers are, and my parents forbid that I ever even look at her when they found out. They still don't know how I really felt. In a time when I wanted to eliminate myself and struggled with that daily, that girl was an oasis for me. Having her as a friend, even if I couldn't tell her how I felt, kept me alive some days. And the first time she held my hand, I felt like life was worth living for a little longer. I still have tender feelings for her, and when she popped up on Facebook as a suggested friend, I panicked because I remembered the beatings I suffered through for my feelings towards her and how I dislike myself for never telling her. I didn't even get to tell her goodbye when I switched schools. So, I guess to sum it up, my parents still don't know how serious my teenage years were emotionally, and they'll never know. My mom laughs about it now like it was nothing but a teenager's silly feelings, but I'll never tell them anything about her or me or my gender struggles to this day. Story 123. When I was like 10, my parents did a lot of traveling for work and left my then 18-year-old sister to take care of me. She, being 18, would spend all this time leaving me alone in the house for days and days at a time. She left me food and everything I would need, and I got myself to and from school every day, so it was never really an issue for me. This happened for sometimes as long as a week. I never told my parents because I was having so much fun. Story 124. Well, there's so much that they'll never know because I don't speak to them anymore. The first thing that came to mind was when I hit our van with the truck. They replaced the headlight and somehow believed that it was just something that happened in a parking lot hit and run. I still can't believe that I got away with that. Story 125. Got a tattoo on my backside. Fits within my bikinis. At 18, and neither parent found out. They are gone now, so there is no one left to disappoint. Story 126. I was visiting my birthplace, where I had a very large extended family. So large I didn't know the majority of them, and it was possible to take a walk to a supermarket with 24 people I was related to. My uncle was a big deal and employed a lot of these relatives from useful tasks to busy work as a way to support them. Some of the useful types were ex-military or police. One of them drove me to a compound that appeared to be an industrial-scale brothel with 5-meter-high walls, armed guards, and menus. I was told I wasn't having enough fun and provided with an adult worker for 3 hours. When I protested, it went from smiles to, "You need to stop being a little meanie right now. Go in there and handle your business." To this day, I don't know if, 1, my father knew, 2, My uncle organized it. 3. The relative did it of his own initiative to curry favor with my uncle. If you're curious, we didn't sleep together, although she did give me her number to hang out. I ended up hanging out with a childhood friend who invited me to a gathering of exclusively couples and told me I could invite someone if I wanted to. Boy, was I tempted. Story 127. My dad is the biggest foot tickler. He always poked and prodded anyone who's ticklish. I'm extremely more sensitive to tickles than anybody who was his victim, and he didn't know that about me. Story 128. I have discovered that the surest way to ensure that his mother knows about something is telling my son not to tell her. Story 129. That 60 minutes I left nightclub there was an organized crime execution 15 feet from where I was. It wasn't a dodgy place even. Story 130. Ha ha ha. So many. I have lived a wild life. As I've gotten older, I have realized that not everyone was as crazy as we were. Story 131. Me, as a 19-year-old, fudge my 18-year-old girlfriend in the bed of the pickup truck with a cap on it, with mom and dad up front driving us up to the mountains for the weekend. Yeah, it was the 80s. Story 132. My mom doesn't know that I got a kidney infection when I was in undergrad. I tried telling her I was in extreme pain pre-diagnosis, and she minimized it by saying that I sleep incorrectly and that it'll sort itself out. I got into a dicier health situation about 4 months after that, and I tried to keep it a secret, knowing she was dealing with other things. But it got bad enough that I had to bite the bullet and tell her that yes, I have a tumor. I have to get surgery ASAP. I already did all the blood work and radiology multiple times. All roads lead to a tumor with decisive, conclusive evidence. The doctor that wanted to operate on me initially had bad vibes. This is what led me to turning to her and my family. She also doesn't know I worked retail at a Karen store for about 6 months after I graduated college because she thinks it's beneath me because I have a degree. It was either that or starve because the job market was just as bad 11 years ago. Story 133. I lived in Arizona for over a year. I was traveling for work and would swing by my parents every couple weeks to a month on my way back. They lived in Kentucky. When they'd call wanting something, I'd always say, I can't tonight. I'm working a double at the yard. Also, they thought I was working at a trucking company an hour from home. Our company traveled the country investigating transport companies for signs of their businesses being used for human trafficking. Story 134. My mom still doesn't know that when she found my plant substance stash when I was a teenager and sent my dad to talk to me, what she, I guess, intended to be a scolding and a lesson about how substances are bad, wound up with us swapping acid trip stories instead. It was a great bonding experience, but it did not have the intended effect. Answer. Bonus tangentially related side fact. My parents don't know that before I started smoking plant substance, I drank, like, a lot. There was a liquor store 2-3 blocks down the street from my high school, and the guy who ran it did not give a shoot about how old you were. It was the 80s. That sort of thing was a lot less strictly enforced back then. So even my very young-looking 14-year-old self could go in there with my lunch money and buy a 2-bottle of Night Train or that cheap, awful cherry vodka and polish off a bottle every day or two. They caught me tipsy once because I didn't have any money to buy booze, so I pretended I was sick to stay home, knowing they had a bunch of old bottles in their closet. I convinced them it was my first time ever getting tipsy, and they decided the hangover I was in for, because I was really smashed, was punishment enough. The only reason I stopped drinking is because I got introduced to plant substance and liked it a lot more than adult beverage, and also no hangover. So I was high every day for like 2 years instead before getting caught with that and getting sent to rehab. Story 135. When I was around 9-10, I went through a firebug stage. My older foster sister was allowed to smoke. 1981. I was playing with her matches when I set a notebook page on fire and dropped it on the carpet, and it burned about a 6-inch diameter hole in our bedroom carpet. I freaked, but then just moved her dresser out and over it to cover it up. It wasn't revealed until we were moving out. The parents just thought she had had an accident and chalked it up to that. I never admitted to it and learned from my mistake and never set anything on fire again inside the house. Story 136. They don't know when I moved away I had a mental breakdown and almost set myself on fire. I'm doing better now at least. Story 137. I first took LSD at 15 and did a lot of it over 3 years. My mom's pretty cool and knows I took various substances over the years, but I don't want her to know how young I was when I first took a Class A substances. I was really stupid for doing that at that age and definitely wouldn't condone it now I'm an adult. Story 138. My ex-best friend walked to my house and stood at the end of my driveway yelling insults at me. My mom went out and told her to GTFO. Ex-bestie told my mom I was sneaking out at night to go fudge a guy we knew from school. Mom denied it and laughed about it with me because